The night sky over the German Reich was a realm of profound fear and immense strategic importance. For the young men of the RAF Bomber Command, flying hundreds of miles into the darkness, it was a one-way trip for far too many. By 1943, the rate of loss for Allied bombers was simply unsustainable. The odds of completing a full tour of duty were bleak, hovering around the point of statistical absurdity. The Allied air campaign was hemorrhaging air crews and aircraft, not because of flak or fighter prowess alone, but due to something unseen, something electronic: Hitler's radar empire. Germany had built an invisible wall of detection so sophisticated, so interconnected, that it turned the night into a deadly illuminated killing zone for the unprepared bomber. But this analysis details a countermeasure so simple, so absurdly low-tech, that its effectiveness shocked both friend and foe. A simple strip of foil, a mundane piece of physics, became the weapon that blinded an entire empire and changed the very nature of electronic warfare forever. This is the story of the unseen war. The architect of this formidable defense was General Joseph Kammhuber, who created a layered, integrated system known as the Kammhuber Line. It was a model of rigid, centralized efficiency. The system's genius, Freya radar, long-range search radar that detected the incoming bomber stream hundreds of miles away, giving early warning and direction. Würzburg radar, short-range, high-precision radar, placed in boxes along the line, with each box covering a sector. This was the fire control brain. Integrated night fighters. Each Würzburg station worked in tandem with a specific night fighter, like the Messerschmitt Bf 110. One Würzburg tracked the bomber. A second Würzburg tracked the German night fighter. A ground controller, often called the Y operator, vectorized the fighter, guiding it with terrifying precision to its target. The rigid nature of the line was its strength. A single bomber could not fly through the boxes without being targeted and intercepted. Every decision was made centrally, based on flawless, clean radar data. The RAF was flying directly into an electronic vice grip, where the hunter could see perfectly, and the prey was completely blind. The RAF's desperation and technical lag. The situation for the Bomber Command was dire. The losses were not random. They were concentrated within the Kammhuber Line's boxes. The Germans had achieved an almost perfect kill ratio, forcing the RAF to adopt increasingly evasive and complex flight paths that consumed fuel and time, but failed to defeat the radar. The intelligence breakthrough. The Allies knew the structure of the defense thanks to intelligence and captured equipment. They understood the frequencies used by the German Würzburg radar, operating around 560 MHz or 53 cm wavelength. Knowing the enemy's frequency was the first, vital step towards a countermeasure. The simple idea: scientists at the Telecommunications Research Establishment, TRE, proposed a theoretical solution based on a principle of physics: resonance. If strips of metal foil were cut to precisely half the wavelength of the enemy radar, 26.56 cm, they would efficiently reflect the radar signal back, creating a massive false echo. This concept, eventually named window by the British and chaff by the Americans, was technically ready by 1942. However, it was held back for over a year by one of the war's most intense security debates: the security paradox, argument against use. The Allied High Command feared that if they used window, the Germans would immediately analyze the strips, understand the principle, and develop their own anti-Allied radar chaff. German chaff could then blind the British chain-home radar, opening Britain to devastating bombing raids. Argument for use. Losses were so high that without it, the bombing campaign would collapse and the war effort would be catastrophically delayed. Necessity finally overcame fear. By mid-1943, with the bomber losses peaking, the order was given to unleash the simple strip of foil. The first mass deployment of window was during Operation Gomorrah, the massive coordinated attack on the city of Hamburg beginning July 24, 1943. This raid would become a tactical and ethical watershed moment: the unveiling. As the lead pathfinders entered the German airspace, they began dumping bundles of the meticulously cut aluminum strips from the bomb bays. On the German screens, the effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for the Kammhuber Line. Instead of seeing dozens of clean, defined dots representing bomber aircraft, the operators of the Würzburg and Freya radars saw a blizzard, a vast, shapeless, impenetrable white cloud across their screens. False echoes. Each bundle of window created a radar signature equivalent to a heavy bomber. A single bomber dropping chaff could appear as dozens of aircraft. The German ground controllers could no longer differentiate the real targets from the decoys. The Kammhuber Line collapsed. The rigid centralized control system, so reliant on clean data, became paralyzed. Night fighters could not be vectored onto targets. Their pilots simply flew aimlessly in the electronic snowstorm. The defense had been utterly blinded by simple physics. The shock in the German high command was profound. They initially believed the British had unleashed a revolutionary new electronic weapon. When the truth, a simple physical countermeasure, was discovered, their efforts to regain control began immediately. The new war, frequency hopping. The Germans swiftly developed Naxos radar, which operated on a completely different frequency, centimetric wave. This was an attempt to outflank the chaff, but it took time to manufacture and deploy. Passive homing, they began equipping night fighters with receivers that could home in on the bomber's own radar emissions, used for navigation and bombing. This introduced the concept of homing on jamming, making the bomber's own defenses a potential target. The Messerschmitt Eisern 62. The development and prioritization of jet fighters were accelerated, hoping sheer speed would negate the tactical confusion. His back and forth, the deployment of a new radar, followed by a new form of chaff, followed by a new sensor, marked the true birth of electronic warfare, EW, as a core military discipline. The Battle of the Beams never ended. It simply evolved. The story of window chaff is the ultimate demonstration that, in war, the simplest solution is often the most elegant and effective. The triumphant trinity: scientific intelligence, knowing the precise wavelength of the enemy's primary weapon; technological innovation, applying the principle of resonant reflection; strategic deployment, overcoming security fears and deploying the measure en masse. The simplicity of the aluminum foil strips fundamentally broke a defense system that was over-engineered and too rigid to adapt quickly. It saved thousands of Allied lives, restored the effectiveness of the bombing campaign, and proved that the war could be won not just with bigger bombs, but with better physics. While Chaff temporarily blinded the German Reich, a secret technological race was already underway in the Pacific. The Allies were perfecting a technology that could see through clouds, fog, and the darkness of night without the enemy knowing. This was the deadly secret of the centimetric radar, a true game-changer in naval warfare. Click here to explore the next chapter of the unseen war and the technology that won the Pacific.